Dear Governor Murphy, it is an old practice to write a letter, to put word to paper and let its witness span the distance. It is an old practice, one we employ today because we are bearing witness to a petition that is itself quite old, having been made now for at least 239 years. It was 239 years ago in 1783 that Belinda Sutton wrote a letter asking for reparation. Miss Sutton had borne body and soul 50 years of enslavement before she was finally made a freed woman and fled to Nova Scotia. And then from that relatively safe distance, she petitioned her state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, for wages and reparation. And yes, she was awarded then a pension of 15 pounds, 12 shillings, to be paid from the estate of Isaac Royal, her enslaver.
Governor Murphy, we address you in worship today because we know that confession is required for atonement. Here, we have faith that reparation, paying our debts, promotes healing and beloved community.
Yes.
New Jersey in 1524, it was Verrazzano, an Italian, who was the first European to see this state. At that time, New Jersey was inhabited by people who called themselves the Lenni Lenape, the original people in their language. And yet, in 1609, Henry Hudson claimed New Jersey for the Dutch. Now, Governor Murphy, you should also know the Dutch were the financiers of the global slave trade in the 17th century. Even though they hailed freedoms of religion and of speech, the primary interest of the Dutch was wealth. They enabled the slave trade because it was lucrative. And then on June 24th, 1664, after the English defeated the Dutch, the Duke of York commissioned Lords Berkeley and Carteret to develop the colony known today as New Jersey.
Governor Murphy, you were not a civic leader when this Lenni Lenape land was occupied and colonized, nor when Belinda Sutton, that singularly magnificent soul, refused to relinquish her labor wholly to the benefit of her enslaver. You didn't have to decide for or against her petition, weighing whether or not doing so might set a precedent for reparation.
Nope.
But now, Governor, the decision has come to you and our legislature. Why? Because our nation didn't heed Miss Sutton's example. It buried her with the whole of this torturous history in legions of unanswered petitions, shutting mouths with the terror of lynchings, stilling liberation with the systemization of oppression, focusing on the accumulation of wealth as if it alone were the holy incarnate.
Governor, you know that New Jersey thrived in colonial times. Being wedged between Philadelphia and New York, cities made wealthy by the products of slave labor. I'm sure we need not remind you that it was in Paterson that the American Industrial Revolution began. Soon thereafter, cotton emerged as the world's first global boom crop. And the United States had a huge price advantage over the rest of the world since much of the labor producing cotton was uncompensated slave labor. New Jersey's prosperity was enmeshed with this cotton industry. Shipping, insurance, packaging, machinists, textiles, rum production, financial markets, all had slavery as their engine. In New Jersey, Bergen County was the slaveholding center. By the late 1700s, enslaved people made up 20% of Bergen's population and 40% of its labor force. I'm sure, Governor Murphy, you know that the only reason the United States became the leading economic power of the world is because of labor stolen from the backs and brows of slaves. Reparations are thus long overdue. Let us say it together, reparations.
Reparations.
New Jersey is a northern state, yes. It did not secede from the Union in 1861, but New Jersey looked the other way when it came to riches wrought from slavery. In 1800, there were 12,000 slaves in this state. By 1830, New Jersey was home to more than 2/3 of the entire population of slaves in the North. Because of the customs of the Dutch, the lack of moral imagination of our leaders, and unchecked greed, New Jersey's history drips with the eagle legacy of chattel slavery. Even when New Jersey outlawed slavery in 1804, freed slaves were required to serve lengthy apprenticeships, which weren't much different from slavery itself. Indeed, the last 16 enslaved people in New Jersey were not freed until 1866, when our state reluctantly ratified the 13th Amendment. Reparations are overdue. And there are legal reasons for reparations. The United States Constitution has white supremacy baked into it, as simple as 1, 2, 3. Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3 declares black Americans as non-citizens, declares them only to be worth 3/5 of a person, perpetuates the evil of slavery. But New Jersey voted to amend that Constitution. The Equal Justice Clause of the 14th Amendment is one provision that suggests reparations, but it's in the 13th Amendment where we see that the U.S. government and all the states were supposed to pay reparations 150 years ago. The 13th Amendment commands the states to abolish slavery and all the badges and incidents of slavery.
Yes.
That means reparations, and this promissory note remains unpaid. There's no legitimacy to claims that we have somehow conquered racism. New Jersey, one of the wealthiest states, has the nation's widest racial gaps in wealth, health, incarceration, and education.
Yes.
We have never lived into the promise of the 13th Amendment, nor General Sherman's Field Order number 15, promising each freed slave 40 acres and a mule. These debts must be paid now, and that payment must be guided by first studying reparations.
So again, precedent begs your witness. So today we pen this letter. Your office, Governor Murphy, was approached by faith and justice leaders. Your ear was turned to this 239-year-old petition. You were provided with the undeniable truth of the split between black and white median wealth in New Jersey, where white citizens net $106,000, while black and Latinx citizens net only $179,000. You were shown the truth that throughout the COVID crisis, black people have been the most likely to be hospitalized and to die from the disease here in New Jersey. And you were asked, Governor Murphy, simply, will you say the word reparation? Now that the cracks of inequity are ravaging your populace in new and undeniable ways, will you champion a reparations task force to study the legacy of slavery and its systemic aftermath right here in New Jersey? Will you begin the process of repair? I can't imagine that when you were asked, you did not hear Reverend Dr. King whisper to you from the Birmingham jail. Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asked the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. But waving off that better angel of your nature, you chose politic. You chose popular. and you refused to say the word reparation. And then quickly, right speedily in fact, you built up a wealth disparity task force, and you claimed it would do the work. Belinda Sutton begs to differ, and she and every soul that has accrued the indignity of this American sin deserves far more than a reference to the disparity of wealth. Governor, can't you see a nation, a state as broken, as implicated as New Jersey, where black children are 21 times more likely to be jailed than white children, even though they commit offenses at similar rates? A state where the black to white infant mortality rate is 3 to 1, the worst in the nation.
Yep.
Don't you see that we need repair, that we need a word and a commitment as encompassing as reparations?
Even though wealth disparity is an unholy byproduct of racism, our main issue is not wealth disparity. This is not just about class. This is about America's original sin of racial injustice. It is about the theft of lives.
This is not about wealth disparity alone, but a disparity of conscience, an absence of care, an erasure of history, a denial of humanity, a refusal of accountability, a history and a present travesty that perpetuates white supremacy and legitimizes racial injustice and terror. Governor Murphy, when faith and justice leaders came to your office, they came on the heels of over 239 years of unanswered petitioners, and they gave you a chance to drag a portion of this sordid history into the light. That was a blessing laid on your desk. A chance to redeem, to rectify, and to repair, but you wouldn't say the word. Governor, reparations may only be a word to you, a word that would make some of your constituents uneasy. But is white discomfort reason enough to deny communal repair?
That's right.
We put our faith in reparation. Ignoring black pain to protect white comfort is the definition of America's greatest sin. And it will keep reinventing itself until we commit to repair.
That's right.
Police killings of black citizens now surpass the rate of lynchings during the worst decades of Jim Crow. End the cycle of violence by saying the word and committing New Jersey to the work of repair.
Now, Governor, we know New Jersey was not always on the wrong side of things. New Jersey fought for the Union in the Civil War to end slavery. And even though it was the slave state of the North, New Jersey never had laws banning interracial marriage. Yet despite wars and civil rights movements and laws like the Amistad Act requiring the teaching of slavery's history, racism remains locked into New Jersey institutions, customs, habits, and people's hearts. We all know this is true.
And Governor Murphy, we know that you can't do this alone. We know that you need us here today speaking truth to power. And we know that you need public support from congregations that have been doing the work of undoing racism for decades, like this one. Congregations that have made a commitment, imperfect, always, but have made a commitment to build the beloved community. Congregations that are willing to say the word.
Reparations.
And we know that you need Senate President Scutari and Assembly Speaker Coughlin to hold a hearing on this bill. But Governor, Senate President, Assembly Speaker, doesn't it mean anything to you that the entire Black Caucus is behind this bill, this Reparations Task Force Act, when you are holding still and silent on the other side? Perhaps it is politic and safe to feign neutrality by avoidance, but it is not right.
Nope.
Reparations have been paid by this nation to the Japanese survivors and families scourged by internment during World War II. Reparations are paid to First Peoples, Native Americans forced off their lands, subject to genocidal violence, and not many people know this. Reparations were paid to slave owners when their slaves were emancipated in 1863, $300 per slave to the owners for their loss of property. Here's the thing, Governor Murphy. This nation has proved that it is willing and able to say the word reparations for all kinds of people, but not for Black Americans. Until we make repair, we will suffer the full weight of this sin. It has been asked and it has been denied for 239 years. It is up to you and to all of us to put our faith in reparations.
Because it is right, because we are all tied into a single garment of destiny. Because confession is required for righteousness, reparations are required to make one whole. Reparations are a just public remedy, an act of abiding faith. We have faith in reparations, and we know, Governor, you can too. Sincerely,
Reverend Anya Samler Michael.
Reverend Scott Samler Michael.
The only reason we're able to say this here is because of this congregation. I hope you know that. This message is from all of us.